They invited me to a five-star restaurant, promising they'd cover everything. I said yes, but when the $2,500 bill came, they forgot their wallets and pushed it to me. Big mistake. That night, I didn't just pay for dinner, I served cold, calculated revenge, and it went viral. If there's one thing I've learned in 10 years of marriage, it's that respect doesn't always come with the wedding vows, especially from in-laws who think they're doing you a favor just by tolerating your presence. That was my reality with Mark and Diane Reynolds, my wife Sarah's parents. Old money image, new money habits. They loved pretending they were above everyone, while conveniently forgetting to pay back the small fortunes they borrowed. For a decade, I played the good son-in-law, showed up for every awkward dinner, nodded through every backhanded compliment, and smiled as Mark called me the IT guy, like I fixed printers for a living. I'm a lead software architect, but to them, I might as well have been the intern. Sarah always told me to let it go. They mean well, she said. They just don't know you. Maybe, or maybe they just didn't care. Then came the invite that changed everything. Our 35th anniversary is coming up, Mark announced during a weekend brunch. We want something special this time, really elegant. He turned to me, already assuming I'd do the legwork. Think you can book Lumiere Royale? Heard good things. Lumiere Royale was the most exclusive spot in Chicago. Reservation only. Velvet rope. No price tags on the wine list. Celebrities, CEOs, politicians. You didn't go there to eat. You went there to be seen. And they wanted me to book it? You sure? I asked, raising an eyebrow. It's not exactly Olive Garden. Mark laughed, waving off my concern. Don't worry about the cost. This one's on us. Just get the table. Diane chimed in without missing a beat. It's our treat, sweetheart. You and Sarah are guests of honor. We just need you to handle the booking. Sarah looked at me, shrugged. I hesitated but said yes. Why? Because deep down, I still wanted to believe there was a version of them that actually respected me. That maybe this night, for once, would be different. I should have known better. The night of the dinner, everything felt performative from the second we arrived. Mark strutted in like he owned the place. Diane snapping photos like she was on the red carpet. They ordered without looking at the menu. French oysters, Wagyu beef, vintage wine flown in from Napa. I barely spoke, let alone ordered anything. I didn't need to. I wasn't hungry for food or for their approval. As each course landed on the table like a theatrical act, I sat back and watched them perform. Toasts, laughter, jokes that weren't funny. This was their show, and I was the prop. Still, I played along, waiting, watching, wondering what the catch would be. Because with Mark and Diane, there was always a catch. And then it came. After dessert, the waiter returned with the bill, tucked neatly inside a leather folder. He set it gently in front of Mark. Mark didn't even look at it. He just smiled, then slid it across the table. To me. Funny thing, he said, chuckling. We left our wallets at home. Both of us. What are the odds? Diane laughed like it was the punchline to a joke. You don't mind, do you, John? You can cover it this time. We'll take care of the next one. I glanced at the bill, $2,178. Not that I couldn't afford it. That wasn't the point. It never was. They hadn't just forgotten their wallets. They had planned this. Every dish, every bottle, every smug smile. It was all part of the performance. And I was supposed to clap, smile, and pick up the tab. That moment right there, with their fake laughter bouncing off the marble walls and a twin $500 check in front of me, that was when everything clicked. They didn't just think they were better than me. They thought I was disposable, a tool, a walking bank account, someone they could manipulate into funding their fantasies while mocking me behind my back. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to find out, was that I'd stopped playing their game a long time ago. And that night, that was the last stage they'd ever perform on. Because I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to make them regret ever thinking I'd say yes. Mark's grin didn't falter at first. He really thought I'd just pull out my wallet and pay like always. Like I was some walking ATM who'd beg for a thank you afterward. I didn't reach for my wallet. I reached for clarity. I didn't order a single thing tonight, I said. My voice was calm, but it landed like a gavel. Not one dish, not a glass of wine, I came because you invited me. The table went still. The only sound was the faint murmur from nearby diners. Diane blinked fast, her forced smile tightening. John, she said, sweet but sharp. Don't make this awkward. Mark leaned forward. Come on, man, it's just dinner. I shook my head. It's never just dinner. Not with you two. You said you'd handle it. You made it clear. Now you're sticking me with a $2,000 tab you built on lies. The waiter froze in place, caught mid-step. I turned to him. Can you split the bill? I'll pay for my seat. Nothing else. He hesitated, glanced at Mark, then nodded. Of course, sir. Mark's face darkened. You're embarrassing us. No, I replied. You did that the moment you tried to scam your own family in public. Diane's voice dropped. Quieter now, but more venomous. You're making a scene. I looked around. People were already watching. A couple at the next table lowered their forks. A man near the bar tilted his phone just slightly. Recording? Maybe. Didn't matter. You came here to show off, I said, keeping my voice steady. But there's a cost to pretending. And tonight, it's due. The waiter returned with the bill. Mine's $60, there's $2,518. I handed over my card without flinching. Mark stared at the paper like it had personally betrayed him. This is ridiculous, he muttered. You seriously expect us to pay this? I expect you to live up to your own promises, I said. But if you're planning on skipping out, know this. I already informed the restaurant manager to save the footage from tonight. If you walk, it's theft. Simple as that. Mark opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Diane looked like she might explode. Instead, she leaned in, whispering, How could you do this to us? You did this to yourself, I replied. You've mocked me for years, made jokes about my job, my income, even my marriage, and all while asking for favors you never repaid. Sarah hadn't said a word since the bill landed. She sat still, watching it unfold. Her silence wasn't confusion. It was realization. Maybe she'd never seen it so clearly before. Maybe I needed her to. Mark finally spoke. You're acting like a child. I stood up, sliding my receipt into my jacket. No, I'm acting like someone who's done being used. He grabbed the check, scanned it again like the numbers might change. What do you want from us? An apology? I met his stare. I want accountability. The manager approached. Professional? Polite? Is there an issue with payment, sir? Mark stiffened. We forgot our wallets. The manager nodded, expression unreadable. Unfortunately, we'll need some form of payment tonight, or we'll have to involve the police. Diane's jaw clenched. You wouldn't dare. I wouldn't have to, I said. They will. People nearby weren't pretending to ignore us anymore. Phones were out. Some were recording. Others just watched, curious or amused. The Reynolds name didn't mean much here. Their entitlement had no shield. And then, as if on cue, I made the offer. I'll pay, I said to the manager. Mark's head snapped up. A flicker of hope passed through his eyes. If, I added, they apologize. Right here, out loud, for lying to me, using me, and treating me like a credit card. Silence. You're kidding, Diane said. You expect us to grovel? No, I said. I expect you to own what you did. You pretend to be respected. Now earn it. Mark glanced around, saw the stares. He wasn't used to being the joke in the room. He could feel the walls closing in, and finally he broke. He stood up. I apologized to my son-in-law. I abused his trust. I was wrong. His voice cracked slightly. Diane followed, eyes glassy but cold. We're sorry. We treated you poorly. We shouldn't have. The words were bitter, but they were loud enough to be heard. I nodded to the manager. Put it on my card. As I signed the slip, I leaned in and said quietly, That's the last time I'll ever pay for either of you. Then I turned to Sarah. Ready? She stood slowly, took my hand, and for the first time that evening, smiled. We walked out together, the crowd parting as we passed. Behind us, Mark and Diane stood frozen, silent, exposed, and owing more than just a dinner bill. The car ride home was silent, not awkward, clarifying. Sarah didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. I could feel her piecing things together in her head. The performance, the manipulation, the way her parents had always pulled strings, behind a velvet curtain of tradition and respectability. When we pulled into our building's parking garage, she finally spoke. "You planned that?" I nodded once. "I did." She didn't look angry. She looked like someone who'd just opened a drawer and found something they weren't ready for but needed to see. "They've been doing this to you for years," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. All the dinners, the events, every single one, I said. And I let them, because I thought if I played along long enough, I'd finally earn their respect. Sarah leaned back in her seat, staring ahead. "I thought they were just difficult, but it was never hard for them with other people. Just you." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The next morning, everything changed. The video had hit social media overnight. Someone at the restaurant posted it anonymously. Just a short clip. Mark pushing the bill toward me. My refusal. My calm voice. "I didn't order a single thing. This bill is yours." It spread like wildfire. On Reddit, it was titled "When the ATM Says No." On TikTok, it had the hashtag "Dine and Deceive." By noon, it had 1 million views. Comment sections exploded with support. "This guy's a legend. Imagine scamming your own family and getting caught on camera." He didn't scream, didn't argue, just dropped the hammer. I didn't post the video. I didn't even know who did. But I didn't need to lift a finger. The internet handled the rest. By evening, Mark's business partners had started pulling away. One issued a public statement about values no longer aligning. Another unfollowed him on every platform. Diane's charity group quietly removed her from the upcoming gala committee. They didn't say why. They didn't have to. Sarah showed me the messages from extended family. Cousins who'd stayed quiet for years now stepped forward. We saw the clip. We never knew how bad it was. "Your husband didn't deserve that. Good for you both." And from her parents? Nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive email pretending to be the victim. Silence. But entitlement doesn't die loudly. It fades slowly, in the absence of attention. A week passed, then 2, then 3. Then came the call from Lumiere Royale's PR office. They were flooded with interview requests. Media wanted to cover the story. Not just the scandal, but the quiet dignity in how it had been handled. I declined. The story wasn't for TV. It had already done what it needed to. One afternoon, Sarah came home with boxes. "Let's move," she said. I found a place across town, smaller but quiet. No reminders of them. We packed that weekend. No long speeches, no arguments, no final goodbyes. We just took what was ours and left behind everything that wasn't. Our new place was simple, peaceful. For the first time in years, there was no lingering tension in the air. No expectation of a call, a request, a favor disguised as family obligation. Just us. That night, standing on the balcony, Sarah looked out at the city and whispered, "I feel lighter." I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was carrying a weight no one else could see. "That's what happens," I said, "when you stop dragging people who were never meant to be your responsibility." She nodded, silent. We didn't toast. We didn't take photos. We didn't tell anyone we'd moved. It wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. Freedom from manipulation disguised as love. From obligations that were never real. From people who never saw us as human, only as useful. That night didn't just change the way Mark and Diane treated me. It ended their illusion. And what came next wasn't rage or drama. It was silence. The kind that stays when the show is finally over and the audience leaves. We didn't need applause. We had peace. Some things implode with noise. Others collapse quietly under their own weight. Mark and Diane's reputation was the latter. A month after the dinner, the shock hadn't faded. Not from the family, not from their social circle, and definitely not from the internet, which hadn't let the video die. Clips had been reposted, captioned, remixed, and analyzed like it was courtroom footage. But the reactions were consistent. People weren't laughing at a funny dinner gone wrong. They were reacting to entitlement exposed, to someone finally drawing a line in the sand with composure. I received no threats, no messages from Mark, no passive-aggressive emails from Diane. Instead, there was an eerie, total silence. Not just online, in real life too. They didn't show up at Sarah's birthday that year, not even a text. They didn't ask to meet, to explain, or to apologize again, because they weren't trying to fix anything. They were hiding. The backlash didn't come as a single blow. It came in small, relentless cuts. One of Mark's real estate partners pulled out of a deal they'd been planning for months, quietly. No confrontation, just a signed exit clause and a forwarded article featuring the viral video. Diane's club membership, the one she flaunted for years, was temporarily suspended for review. Word was the board didn't want the association, not after clients began questioning the club's standards. A woman who once relished being the loudest voice in the room now couldn't get on the invitation list for a brunch. And the family, those who used to whisper criticisms about me in kitchens and parking lots, started reaching out, to Sarah, not me. I didn't realize how much you two went through. I always thought they were harsh, but I had no idea. We're sorry. You both deserve better. Sarah didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She'd spent her whole life normalizing their behavior. Now, for the first time, she saw it through a wider lens, and so did everyone else. But the part that surprised me most wasn't how others reacted. It was how little I cared. Before, I might have clung to their silence as rejection. A younger version of me would have tried to fix it. Meet them halfway. Initiate peace. Now I felt nothing, and that was freedom. Mark and Diane made one last attempt to reclaim their image. 3 months after the restaurant incident, they hosted a modest anniversary event at a local hotel. Nothing flashy, just a simple evening, family only. The goal clearly was to reset the narrative, show they could still hold a room, still be respected. No one showed up, not even their closest allies. Because what do you say to people who've been publicly unmasked, to people who use tradition as leverage and generosity as theater? Word had spread too far, and no amount of charm could put it back in the bottle. Don't dine with debtors who dress like kings and pay like beggars, someone said. It stuck. Sarah and I didn't talk about it much. We had no interest in rehashing the past. The new apartment, small as it was, became a symbol of the life we chose, on our terms. No obligations, no strings, no staged dinners with hidden price tags. People asked us what we'd do if Mark or Diane ever tried to reconnect. We didn't answer. We didn't need to. Their silence was the only proof we needed that they finally understood. They couldn't manipulate their way back, not with us, not with anyone paying attention, and while their world grew smaller, ours quietly expanded. Sarah started her own design firm, something she'd put off for years out of fear that Diane would criticize it. I took on a teaching position at a local college on weekends, mentoring software students, something I'd always wanted but never prioritized because I was too busy managing the expectations of others. And we traveled, short trips, nothing extravagant, but we made the plans together, paid from our own accounts, ate where we wanted, laughed without cameras. The consequences weren't about revenge. They were about realignment. Because sometimes cutting ties isn't an act of war, it's an act of preservation. And the absence of toxicity, that's not loss, that's healing. Months passed. The online buzz faded, but the memory didn't. People moved on, but not everyone forgot. Mark and Diane's social orbit never recovered. They tried to pretend it hadn't happened, smiled in the few public places they still felt safe visiting, but even the silence around them was different now, measured, watchful. And what really stuck was the way people treated them. No one confronted them. No one argued. But they weren't welcomed either. They were tolerated in the way people endure a lingering bad smell in a shared elevator. It wasn't public shaming. It was professional distance and social disinterest. Quiet exile. Sarah and I rarely discussed them anymore. Not out of anger, just irrelevance. That's what finally happened. They became irrelevant. We didn't send holiday cards. We didn't get any either. We didn't block their numbers, but they didn't call. They didn't check on birthdays, didn't ask about milestones. We didn't offer updates. And that, more than any confrontation, sealed the shift. They had thrived on control, on attention. Whether admiration or conflict didn't matter, as long as they were at the center. Now we gave them nothing, and there was no louder silence than that. One evening, almost a year after the dinner, Sarah and I sat on the balcony of our new apartment. A friend had just left after dinner, and we were still laughing about a story he'd told. It felt simple, light. She turned to me and said, "Do you think they ever learned anything?" I thought for a moment, then shook my head. "Doesn't matter if they did." She smiled quietly. "Yeah, I guess it doesn't. Because here's the truth. The moral of this story wasn't about teaching them a lesson. It was about learning one myself. For years, I believed that earning respect meant tolerating disrespect. That if I was patient enough, forgiving enough, useful enough, eventually people would treat me better. But respect isn't earned through suffering, and family isn't defined by obligation. It's defined by trust, by care, by reciprocity, not blood ties or last names. That dinner was the first time I made a boundary visible. Not with threats, not with rage, just with facts. Calm, direct, undeniable facts. And in doing so, I didn't just protect myself. I gave Sarah permission to see clearly and to choose something better with me. The internet called it revenge. Some called it petty. Others said it was long overdue. But to me, it was a reset, not vengeance, not spite, just the quiet truth finally standing up in a room full of noise. And for anyone who's been through something similar, being used, dismissed, taken for granted by people hiding behind titles like family, this is the part I want you to remember. You don't have to light the room on fire to leave it. You don't need an audience to reclaim your worth. You don't owe loyalty to those who treat your kindness like a weakness. Sometimes the greatest justice isn't in the punishment. It's in the absence. It's in removing yourself so completely that their power disappears with you. Sarah and I never sought revenge. We just stopped showing up to be disrespected. And in that space, we built something better. Something smaller, yes, but stronger. People still ask me sometimes what happened that night. I don't retell it in full anymore. I just say, it was the most expensive meal they never paid for. And the moment I finally did,